So we've established that we need to set good priorities before we even schedule. Otherwise, we're just going to end up filling our day with meaningless tasks that don't really get us to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. And prioritization is the opportunity that we have to actually decide what is the most meaningful thing for us, what's going to get us to our goal in the most effective way. So let's dive into this a little bit more in detail so that we can get some more guidelines. So, when should you prioritize? So, I recommend that you initially start by setting weekly priorities. And then, as you get more and more used to that, shift to doing daily priorities. I personally do daily priorities, but I actually did weekly priorities for probably my first couple years. In fact, I realistically didn't need to do that for that long, honestly. But I just didn't feel the need to go to daily priorities because I guess things in my life weren't changing fast enough for it to require that. So when you're in a more relaxed time, then you can set weekly priorities. But when you're really, really busy, you might want to decide to do daily priorities just to make sure that you're accommodating for any changes in what you think is the most important at any given moment. And I would always say that after you do this, set your schedule after that. So it's usually the night before. So I would do my prioritization the night before, and then I would set the schedule for the next day the night before. And if I'm setting weekly priorities, then I would set my week's worth of schedules at the beginning of that week or the night before the beginning of that week technically starts. So that might look like saying on Sunday night, I'd do my prioritization and then I'd set out my priorities for the entire week, Monday through to Saturday or Friday, if I wanted to give Saturday an unscheduled break. But then if I'm doing daily priorities, I would do it on the night before and I just set the schedule for the next day and I just repeat that every single day. Funnily enough, it's actually quite a relaxing process to do this because it makes you just feel like you're in control of what's happening in your life, which is a little bit therapeutic, especially when things get quite chaotic. And while you're doing this, I would definitely recommend that you use either a diary or an app. Now, I personally prefer using an app because there's a lot of features that are quite convenient through an app that you don't get through a diary. The benefits of using a diary is that you do get that very pen and paper feel, which a lot of people really love. And I can definitely understand that it's in itself quite a calming process to just write things down and just spend time to kind of plan things. And that pen and paper does feel quite good to do that. Personally, I use an app because it offers me the benefit of being able to shuffle and reorganize my time throughout the day without having to pull out a diary. And I feel like it's a little bit more just portable and more accessible. And I guess this is because my day personally tends to change pretty often. Even when I was a student, I was juggling a lot of things at the same time. So it was necessary for me to be able to reorganize my day on the fly very, very quickly. That's very difficult to do during the day for a diary because you have to literally like scribble things out and then write it out again, which looks kind of messy. Whereas on the app, you can just kind of click and hold and shuffle things around and use a some kind of calendar app. And there's number of calendar apps out there. So me personally, I'm kind of biased towards using apps, but experiment for yourself, see which one feels better. The best solution is always the one that you're going to be able to do day in, day out consistently. I've been scheduling basically every single day for the last probably 10 years of my life. And I don't think I've probably missed a single day where I haven't scheduled it. It's not me being pedantic. It honestly just gives me so much more control over my life that it means that I have a lot more free time available and I can actually spend the time doing what I want to do. So if my friends say, if I can hang out, then I can schedule it in, which might seem really artificial to have to schedule in time to spend time with family or friends, but it at least means I get the time to spend time with family or friends rather than some people who are really busy yet don't actually take the time to really schedule things in. At the end of the day, they are the ones that just don't have time to do anything. So I think you ultimately sacrifice more just by relinquishing the amount of control that you could have. When you're setting the actual tasks into your app or your diary or your calendar or whatever you're using, like I mentioned before, you should always make sure that your tasks and things are very specific. And when I say specific, I often find that students underestimate how specific they should make things, especially when they're first starting out. So using the example of before, don't just write biology at 2 p.m. Say, okay, 2 p.m., go to library. 2:10, open books, sat down. Okay, 2:15, set study goals for next 1 hour. Really break it down and then say, okay, 2:15 to 3 p.m. focused study using a effective technique, such as one of the many techniques that I'll show you later in the courses and the tips that we've already learned through the gear check. So you might be thinking, okay, well, look, it seems like a lot of time to be spending 15 minutes just preparing to begin the study. But here's the thing is that just because you wrote biology 2 p.m. doesn't mean that as soon as 2 p.m. hits, you suddenly start going into focused study. You probably require a bit of setup anyway. So all I'm doing is I'm just actually writing it down so I'm at least realistic with what I'm spending my time doing. And then it means that I can focus on something that's very achievable at any given moment. So it means that because it's specific, it means that it's more focused. And so my brain is not going to be as willing to delay because it's like, okay, 2 p.m. library. That's pretty clear. I need to go to the library at 2 p.m. By 2:10, I need to have all my books open, sat down, ready to study. That's pretty easy to understand. So there's no delays because I'm not giving myself a chance to think about what do I do next. Okay? I'm not thinking about what next. And because I'm not thinking about what next, I'm less likely to start procrastinating. And so setting more specific goals, and eventually when you get more and more used to this, you won't have to do this as much. But for beginners, I really recommend actually setting much more specific goals about exactly what you want to achieve, as well as setting these study goals as well. So you can see that here, I've set study goals for the next hour. Don't just say something like, oh, I'm going to study biology between 2 to 5 p.m. 3 hours is a lot of time, and you could be doing a lot of stuff during that time. Are you going to be maximally focused for that full 3 hours? Most people are not going to be. So it's better to actually say, okay, in the first hour, I'm going to get this done, A, B, and C. And in the second hour, I'm going to cover topics D and E. And in the third hour, I'm going to revise A through to E to make sure that I've got it all down, or whatever it is. And you can use whatever techniques that you're familiar with. You can use the techniques that you're going to learn in this course and the techniques you've already learned. It doesn't really matter, but you want to be much more intentional with the way that you use your time. For some of my students who really struggle to maintain focus, I actually tell them to set 30-minute goals. So every 30 minutes, they know exactly what they're trying to do. So really anchor in and specify your tasks, make them really specific, and set those really short-term goals. Now, as some final tips, just to make sure that all of this goes smoothly, when you're scheduling in your times, on top of making them specific, you always want to start with your highest priority items first. So if you're using a very simple prioritization, such as what are the 2 things that I want to make sure I definitely get done tomorrow, then you want to schedule those 2 things in first, and then you can schedule in all your other items after that. And then it's not so important whether you finish them and get them done or not, because you know for sure that you're getting your top 2 priority items done definitely by the end of that day. And remember, because you're reprioritizing relatively frequently, you don't have to worry about there being something in your list that you think, oh, this is also kind of important. It's okay. You don't have to set it as a high priority for that day. You can set it as a high priority for the next day. Because remember, at the end of every day or at the end of every week, whenever you decide to do it, you're going to be reevaluating all your priorities anyway. So these top 2 most important items, they're probably going to change every single day anyway. But it means that over time, instead of being completely bogged down, you're always able to get through your top priority items so that when things are really busy, you've got lots of stuff to do. But when things are more relaxed, then you actually have free time that you can gather up as well. So your level of busyness is always going to go up and down throughout the weeks. When there's exams, you tend to be busier. When there's not, it tends to be freer. During the breaks, you might be more free. If you work part-time, you might be busier. So things always go up and down. But when you're consistent, you'll always eventually get through everything. But trying to rush through it means that you're sacrificing so much that eventually you make other things way too urgent. And then when things are urgent, you just lose all of that freedom. So just be really strict about setting your 2, maybe 3 highest priority items. Definitely, I would not go above 3. Even me, as I am with my current level of prioritization and time management, it's pretty hard for me to clock out more than 3 items consistently on any given day. And on the topic of consistency, in order to make sure that we don't fall into the very common mistake of overpacking and overscheduling our days, we will always want to make sure that we overestimate the amount of time that something will take by 25%. So if we think that it will take us 1 hour to study something, then set ourselves 1 hour and 15 minutes. If we think something is going to take us 2 hours to study something, then make sure that we set ourselves 2.5 hours. And then also make sure that we, on top of that, we underfill our days by about 25% as well. It's sometimes a little bit difficult to track what 25% underfilling actually means. So what I generally recommend is that you always leave roughly a 15-minute buffer between every single task that you do. And at the end of every day, you want to have at least 30 minutes to 1 hour that is not scheduled, that is perfectly free. So if you don't have 30 minutes to 1 hour of wiggle room and 15 minutes between each task wiggle room, just take items off and prioritize a little bit harder, because the chances are that unless everything goes perfectly well for you the next day, you're not actually going to end up getting it done anyway, and then you're just going to get your plan derailed. It's better to underfill it, get everything done for sure, and then if you've got free time left over, you can fill in another task very easily at the end of that day just to fill in that time, and you won't have lost anything. And remember, because you're scheduling your top 2 priority items first, you're definitely going to get those done. So even if you do miss 1 or 2 items that you could possibly have had time to do, it's not really going to make a big difference because they weren't super important for you anyway. Now, over time, you're going to realize exactly where the balance is for you here. You're not going to need to overestimate by 25% every time. Nowadays, I get it to the point where I'm pretty accurate to around 10%. So I only overestimate my time by 10%, and me underfilling it, well, I don't really tend to need to underfill it anymore because I schedule in time for relaxation and stuff. So my underfilling is only usually just having that 15-minute buffer or 10-minute buffer is often enough for me. So you want to start a little bit conservative, be on the safe side, and then you can meet in the middle once you get a little bit more experience. Some people tend to overestimate or need to overestimate a lot more. Some people will need to underfill a lot more. And it's just about figuring out where the balance is for you. And then the final very important tip that's going to allow you to actually do all of this is you want to make sure that you're actually scheduling a time to do the planning necessary to do the prioritization. So often people don't actually give themselves time to do this prioritization. And obviously, this entire system kind of falls apart in that case. Good place that I'd recommend that you do it is in this end of the day, 30 minutes to 1 hour that you give yourself as sort of free time. You can actually multi-purpose use that as your dedicated kind of planning time, which means that no matter what happens on any given day, you've always got time to reevaluate and make sure that the next day is even better or changing your priority list. So a few guidelines here, and if you follow these checklists in terms of what you shouldn't do while making sure that you do all the things that you should do right, then you're going to have a 90% pretty good schedule and far beyond what most students are capable of doing. And once again, this becomes a solid foundation, then I'm going to teach you a completely different way of managing your time, which you're not going to believe how much more efficient that is. But it's completely impossible to achieve, not even a dream, if you're not able to do at least this basic stuff pretty smoothly and comfortably.